Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmic Conversations, hosted through Conscious Awakening Network. I'm Patricia Walls, and I'm honored to be your host. Cosmic Conversations airs every Tuesday, where we share intimate conversations with visionaries, teachers, healers, artists, and forward-thinking souls who are actively shaping the new Earth. Conscious Awakening Network, or CAN to some people, is a transformational, multidimensional platform devoted to accelerating spiritual evolution, activating your highest potential, and expanding global consciousness. We do this through summits, webinars, exclusive programming. All of this helps CAN to bring together powerful collection of guides and wisdom keepers who are supporting multidimensional awakening and embodied truth. And in that way, today, I'm excited to share our founder and developer with you of Conscious Awakening Network and Cosmic Conversations, Sheila Seppi. Sheila is a multidimensional teacher, healer, and a soul exchange walk-in from the omni-stream of divine consciousness, whose mission is to assist humanity through the planetary ascension process. Sheila, again, is the founder of Conscious Awakening Network, also Way Ministries and the Soul Reconnection Technique and the Living Light Archives, which is what she's here to talk to us about tonight. And so, welcome, Sheila. I'm so glad that you are here and that I get to host you. Oh, my
Yay!
goodness.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me as a guest. It's really fun, and honestly, I'm truly honored to be part of the conversation tonight and to be able to connect with everybody who's here, whether they're live or watching it on replay. Thank you guys so much for being here, and Patricia, thank you for the phenomenal job that you're doing hosting Cosmic Conversations. I am thrilled that you're doing this.
I'm having a lot of fun. So before we get started, I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions for Sheila, and please do come with questions, please ask them in the Q&A. So and that way we'll be able to see them rather on the chat. So I'm so excited. So Sheila, talk to us about this program that you've got, the Living Light.
Okay, well, I am super excited about that. Most of you already know that I am a soul exchange walk in, and when I arrived, I had so much information that was blurring around in my head. You guys have all heard my story, and part of that includes the fact that immediately I began to remember past lives, which was significant because I didn't believe in past lives. And the other thing was I remembered healing modalities that I had never ever studied. And then I had all this universal information that was running around in my head, and I had absolutely no clue what to do with it. I had no understanding, I've never even read a metaphysical book. So the things that I was seeing made no sense to me whatsoever. It's taken me, 20 plus years in order to be able to find the languaging, in order to bring that information forward. And, I was working with some of the information as I could understand it all the way along. But it took me about 20 years to compile all that information. And now I am bringing it through the Institute of Living Light Archives. And so we call that ILA. ILA, the information that I get, well, first, let me back up just a minute, because we all know when we have our spiritual awakening, the first thing, we're dazed and confused. I was dazed and confused for quite a while.
Yeah.
As I was able to better understand the information and to hold the frequency of the information, I was able to anchor it. As I began to anchor that information, then the meanings began to just flow. And it's like when we have our spiritual awakening, one thing leads to the next, which leads to the next, which leads to the next. Our awakening process is the same. Our awakening process never changes, but the information that we're able or capable of holding and bringing forward does change. We'll have more memories. And I know that's true with a lot of walk-ins. Like for me, when I first walked in, I had no memories whatsoever. None. I haven't had memories even about my children until about 3 years ago. And I just kept begging my team. I'm like, please give me these memories. I had a few select memories, and they were good memories. I had about 3 or 4 about it, with each of the kids. I had the birth process. I had a couple, events, birthdays, stuff like that, photographs. And then the kids will say, remember this, remember that. And I'm like, yeah, sounds like we had a great time. No, I don't remember. But you're not going to tell your kids, no, I don't remember your birthday. I'm sorry. I have a clue. But as all that information started happening, I had this craving to want to be able to remember. So 3 years ago, I kept on, I want to remember, I want to remember, I want to remember, I want to remember. And they gave me a lot of my memories back. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want those memories. Take those memories away. Those are not good memories. I don't want that. But I kept asking, so I got it. But in that remembrance process, they also brought online a lot of the memories. It helped me to anchor all that information that I came in with. And so I started having these dreams where I was connecting into this larger grid system. Now, those of you who know me or those of you who have worked with me know that one of the things that I'm able to do is when I work with someone, I can look at you and I can see your gridded process. I can see all your bodies. I've been able to identify matrix fields. I can see all the grid systems that make you up. And I can see what I identified as a trauma body. But within that, we're connected to a larger grid. And I kept seeing all this information. Well, about 5 years ago, I was in a healing session and I was working. I have a team of 3 Arcturians that I work with, and we were conducting healing. And all of a sudden they stopped and they stood back. And when they did, I had an angelic being, I had an Arcturian, and I had an Andromedan being that came in and said they were going to teach me about the ley lines of the body. Well, me being me, I'm like, oh, well, we call those meridians. And they're like, no, we're not talking about the meridians. We're talking about the ley lines of the body. It's like, no, we do. We really call those meridians. They're like, no, Sheila, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the ley lines. So they began to teach me about the ley lines of the body, which also then intersected with this larger grid. And so that, with what they were teaching me over a period of about a year, that became what's called the Soul Reconnection Technique that I'm able to teach to people. And I think I have about 30 people now that has been trained that can go out and provide this. And so they brought it because they said the frequency of humanity now is such that they can hold those kinds of healing. And the reality is that what used to work with some people will no longer work. And these wonderful healing modalities that we have all used for years, all of a sudden they've kind of lost a little of their oomph. And it's because the frequencies on the planet have changed. And it's because the frequencies of humanity have changed. So SRT and other programs that are out there are the types of frequencies that will work. So I'm like, great, this is wonderful. Then they started expanding my consciousness even further. And that's when I started having the dreams about these gridded systems. And then, have you guys ever had something that's just like right on the tip of your tongue? And it's like, oh man, I just can't, it's right there and I can't think of it. Well, that's the way it was for me. And then bam, all this memory started flooding in. And I remembered all the way back to where Source began. I remembered that womb. I remembered the pre-source state. I remembered the stillness. I remembered that first inversion, that first, it wasn't a pulse, but it was like a pulse. It wasn't a pulse, but it was a pulse. I don't know how else to say it. And anyway, there was the inversion that was like, I am, when the source became conscious. And then from that came all the the 7 laws of the I ams, and then from that became all the Elohim and all the dragon frequencies and all the Christos frequencies. So it took me all the way back to where then I saw how everything was happening simultaneously, and this large grid came into formation. Now this grid is more like a crystalline lattice, and within what makes up this crystalline lattice are all these filaments of light that crisscross. And these filaments of light inside of them have liquid light. And that liquid light is consistent of all of the geometric patterning, which makes up the whole of everything. Now, think of a grid that spans eternity, because that is the plasmatic mind of the source energy itself. So within that, where these grids cross in certain locations, there are what's called nodes that open and close, open and close. Well, we have that in the human body. We all know about the nodes of the body. The universe has that, because remember, we're a reflection of that. As without, so within; as within, so without. We are the micro of the macro. And so within these nodes were actually wholes of universe. There was dimensions, densities, how everything came together. And as these filaments of light, as I was looking at that, it was almost like whoosh, I kind of dropped into it, and I could see all of that swirling around me. Well, that also looked to me like the oversoul before I incarnated, because I also had those memories that I brought in, and that the oversoul itself, when we get ready to incarnate, if this is the oversoul, these are what I call the Shantias Khan, these little fingers, which contain the aspects for the multidimensional selves. It has your higher self, it has all your grids, it has all the information, all the codes for your spiritual body, for the physical, etc. And so what I was seeing as I dropped into that was the same structure that I saw on the inside of the Shantias Khan. I write about that in the first book, Walk-In's Cosmology of the Soul, and how that Shantias Khan is this swirling vibration of light and sound and frequencies and, little tinklies, sparklies, and, it's beautiful. Well, that's what I was seeing in the crystalline grid, which then just reinforced that we are that which we come from. We're already that, the plasmatic mind of the source. So within that, they began to give me these concepts that, again, has taken me a long period of time to be able to break down into say hi everybody, into digestible chunks, so that I could share that with people, so that everyone could go back. So when I'm teaching this, the Living Light Archives teachings, there's like 4 different pathways. So the first one is the first pathway is for like the initiate to come in. You learn about the grids, you learn about the holographic structure of the universe, you begin to understand the codex information. These are the codes of humanity. They're information packets that begin to unfold. And they even showed me how to me, these information packets look like sigils, like light language sigils. And so these sigils, one little sigil contain like enough information to create an entire universe. So I was just like, I was enamored. How do you put that on a piece of paper? How do you tell people about that? So I was just calling them codes forever, but then I was corrected, because now the cool word is the codex. So, I started calling them codexes, because that's what everybody's calling codes now. So within these codes contains everything that we need. So I went back through all of my teachings, and I could see how certain people had certain frequencies that came through at certain times for certain illnesses or certain behaviors or certain patterns. Because I used to, not anymore, but I used to keep these detailed notebooks on, I met with Sally today, and this is what happened, and these are the results from the last session, and this is what occurred, and I would have all these light language symbols. And so I went back through all of my notes, and I began to categorize them in a format that made sense to me. And what made sense to me was part of the training that I received along the way was from Dr. Viktor Frankl and Dr. Randall Frank. And they created systems that would use, we just called them vials. Some of them were liquid-filled little tubes. Some of them had, they were wooden, but they were all infused with certain frequencies. And the way they would break those frequencies down, let's say you might have something that says environmental intolerance, but the environmental intolerance could be allergies. It could also be the fact that your roommate is driving you crazy, or your dog wants to go play and you're right in the middle of an interview, okay? So that environmental intolerance can take a lot of different forms for a lot of different people. So when I went back and I found all those commonalities, then I started putting them, okay, now this is physical, this is emotional, this is mental, this has to do with the matrix body, this has to do, with the axonal grid system, this has to do with this. And I began to categorize them. And so part of what I teach in the Living Light Archives is this categorization process that people can use for healing. After I got all of that categorized and I went back, everything comes out to 144. Figure that out. So I was like, whoa, I can't believe 144, that's a magical number. Even though I don't know what the 144, I know everybody talks about the 144, but it's, your 12 times 12. And when I first came in, everything was in 12s for me. Everything I did was 12s. That was the number, 12, 12, 12, 12. I didn't know what that meant. But now I understand that this is like right now we operate within 12 fields. We have the 12 different dimensions. We have 12 major everythings, okay? We have the 12 ley lines. We have the 12 major chakras, yada, yada, yada. Everything comes in these sets of 12. And so after I did this set, then they started giving me original source codes as to this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Now you have to understand, Patricia, this is coming from my team, okay? And my team will see things probably differently than your team will see things, because I know you've got a phenomenal system where people can go in and work in the Hall of Records. You've written books about it. I need to interview you.
You
So,
have. You
I
have
know.
it.
I loved it. And so, it was just an amazing process, and it was like one thing led to the next that led to the next. So you learn about the basics in that first pathway. The second pathway is really for the practitioner level 1. And these are people who are really into the codex and they want that additional information. And it's like, okay, give it to me. And it's like, okay, this is how you use it. This is the format. This is what you do. Then there's a next level, pathway 3, and that is like practitioner 2 or a master level. Okay. And then you learn what makes up each of these codex and how you can combine them and, that kind of, you can sandwich them together almost like Reiki symbols. Then there is pathway 4, and that's the teacher pathway. And that's for people who are really interested in becoming a teacher. And I need teachers. I can only do so much. So I'm looking for people who are feeling called to this work. Now you can find out more about it if you go to the website, SheilaSeppi.com, go under the Institute of Living Light Archives. Not only are you going to see that, but you're also going to see all the other courses that I have. So a lot of people say, why aren't you doing Cosmic Conversations anymore? I'm like, because my team put me to work again. And so I've been developing courses. I've been developing the Institute. I've been developing all of these things. And so I also have what's called Vibrational Mastery. And this is a course that teaches you about how to take control of your own vibration, how to create your own reality, how to, be able to manage your field. The next one is Cosmic Convergence. And, I wrote a book called Cosmic Convergence, Journeys of Walk-in Starseeds and Hybrids. And this is one where I talk about all the densities, all the dimensions, all the different pathways. I talk about all of the different realms. I talk about all of the things that make up the universe. And then I talk about how that translates over to walk-in starseeds hybrids as well. Then I have the Mega Mama, and that one is what I call the universal field and the holographic grid. And that's where we really dive deep into like the gridded systems, into all the pathways and everything that makes this universe up. We even talk a little bit about the I ams. We talk about the Elohim energies. So we just have this ton of information that's out there, and that's under the Institute. Well, we call it, ILLA, ILA. And so that's short for that. And so, part of that calling that I have is, I used to only do spiritual teachings. And my collective came to me one day and they're like, people cannot truly drop into who they truly are at a soul level when they're in pain. And so I took that to mean, I got to learn all these modalities, And I took everything so personal then. It was like, I've got to do this, I got to do that. And then I really studied all of this stuff. And they reminded me that after I learned that, that was to give me the foundation. That was to give me the basis. And now what I do is I use all that foundational knowledge and I wrap it up in all of these different programs so that when people take it, they can kind of like hit the ground running. And then after they did that, they started talking to me more about for those people that know me, I have, right now I'm operating primarily through the Andromedan source streams. And so, when I came in from a collective, which is the Yani collective, which is part of the overall larger omni-stream of divine consciousness, or the ODC. And I work with the ODC because when I do that, I can open up, and then it's just like all this energy that's up here, that all this streams of knowledge will come in, and I can pretty much access whatever it is someone needs during a healing session, or what we need to bring through. And all they keep wanting to talk about is the living light, the liquid light, the sacred geometry that makes us up who we are, because they're saying that because of how humanity is expanding, how our consciousness is rising, how our vibrational frequency is really starting to shift the cellular structure of who we are, the modalities that we have on the planet soon are not going to work for people. That was a long answer to a short question. I'm sorry, Patricia, but I had to get all that in because it's like one thing kind of leads to another, which leads to another.
Right. I was thinking while you were talking that most of us and pretty much everybody that links in here, they're not
Yeah,
newbies.
that's
They're
right.
already doing this work on different levels. And I was thinking to myself, I think we all started out that way. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we take these courses, right? We take these courses because we're interested in helping humanity, but what happens along the way is that we heal, because
Yeah,
you can't take a course without doing the work.
that's right.
Right. And so that's the universe's wicked sense of humor to get us to heal.
It is.
It tricks us into thinking, oh, I want to be a healer, so I'm going to take this course,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to take that course, and I'm going to take that course. And the entire time we're just shifting,
Yeah,
shifting and healing and moving things
yeah,
around. And yeah, I have found that, and I talk about that a lot, the fact that the it, nothing's energy doesn't stop moving.
right,
Life doesn't stop moving. The universe doesn't stop moving, right?
right,
And so, because we are expanding exponentially, not only us, but everything, then what worked for us doesn't work for us anymore. Like you said, I mean, I've found that in a lot of different ways. The different modalities that were all of the catchwords, they're sort of falling by the wayside,
right.
and
Absolutely.
people aren't as interested in those as they used to be.
Right. Yeah.
So, um, Adora said, I was reading the word frequency in an email that, yeah, frequency, we use language, don't we, Sheila? We're humans and we have to talk and we use language to talk. And unfortunately, our English language just cannot describe what we're experiencing in now today. And
Right.
and I find that with myself, it's like you said, Sheila, I know the word,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'll know the first letter of the word,
Yeah.
and I'll say, it begins with an L. I
Yeah.
can't tell you what it is, but it
Yeah.
begins with an
Yeah.
L,
Yeah.
you know. And so
Yeah.
for me, it was a joke with me because how I explained it was I've been facilitating light language for so long, I don't know the English language anymore,
I know.
you know.
I know. Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
so
do. One of the things I was going to say, when I first came in, shamanism is really what anchored me
yeah,
into my body and learning how to ground, number one. And I find that truism is more important today than ever before. So I'm really grateful to have had, the opportunity to walk that walk with, I had my spiritual teacher was of Hopi lineage. And so, I studied with her for 23 years actually until she passed last January. And she was a phenomenal, phenomenal woman. And she was a walk in also. She'd come in at the age of 5 through an accident. She was climbing up into the barn because she just knew her parents were hiding her Christmas presents there. And that ladder went backwards and just, busted her skull and, blah, blah, blah. But, she taught me so much stuff. And part of what she taught me along the way was what's called the Hopi 20 count. Now, the Hopi 20 count call on the original Palladian teachings that were given to the Hopi because the Hopi come from the Pallades. And so they were talking about how, you have these universal structures. You have the spider woman, so once that the source energy, which the great spirit, came into being, the masculine and feminine was Satukne and Spider Woman. And then Spider Woman began to weave this universal web, which is the crystalline structure. And I'm going back on, wait a minute. They were already taught, we were talking about this thousands of years ago. And so then I started looking at it. They have the dream weavers. They have the architects of reality. So I was studying this stuff like 20 years ago. And then as I would go through my notebooks, I'd be like, wait a minute. This is the crystalline grid. Wait a minute. This is the great I ams. Oh, wait a minute. Everything began to line up. And more people are finding that. Now, everybody that's on this call obviously is awake, or you wouldn't even be here on this call. You would have already said, these people are crazy.
well, we are.
Yeah,
In a
in a
good
good
way.
way, in a good way, in a very good way. And so, if you will go back and look in your life, you're going to start finding all these synchronicities that bring you to where you are. And in this awakening process, you'll find that there's times that we have these ebbs and flows where we get these huge fluxes of energy and we're like, wow, and we're going wide open, and then we start to anchor, we start to stabilize, and we go along, and then we get another influx, and then we stabilize. Well, I'm finding now as I'm working with more and more clients, they're telling me, I'm walking through my house and I even forget my name. I can't remember anything now. I go from one place to another and I'm like, how did I get here? And then all of a sudden I feel like everything in my life has shifted. And then I walk from one room to the other and then everything's back the same. We're walking through all these dimensional shifts right now. And as we do, it affects the cellular structure of our beingness. And when we have that beingness beginning to shift and change, there's no manual out there to tell us what's coming next. So a lot of people are not having a really good time right now with all this energy. So, because people were telling me, oh, I can't get an appointment for so many months down the road and I really need to get in and see you, or, this is happening, that's happening. I developed what's called the Ascension Support Circle, and that meets on Thursdays for 2 hours. I do like 30-minute activation. I talk about the energies of what's happening. We do a clearing. I talk about homeopathic remedies that can support your nervous system because, boy, our nervous systems are shifting and changing big time. And so it's like you get your nervous system settled today, you go to bed, you wake up. Well, you've been inundated with a whole new set of frequencies. So by the time you put your first foot on the floor, that nervous system is a little wonky again. It's like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm still asleep. I don't know how many of you that's been happening to, but I'm hearing it from a lot of people. So we're going to do this on Thursdays. We're going to start that in April the 2nd. And you can learn about that too. Just go to SheilaSeppi.com, and it's the Ascension Support Circle. Let's see what this Friday. Okay, well, remember, I told you I was anchored in shamanism. So what's coming up? The equinox. I always do ceremony during the equinox. And I was doing a session with someone. Actually, I was doing the Monday night transmissions. And all of a sudden, they're like, you have to do ceremony. I'm like, well, of course I'm going to do ceremony. You always do ceremony on the equinox. They're like, no, you're going to do an open, free ceremony. So if you guys are not on the mailing list, get on my mailing list. You'll get sign up. You'll get a link. You can go to it, and we're going to do an equinox ceremony to bring and usher in the season of the new beginning, work with the energy of the condor, work with the energy of the eagle, bringing in and anchoring all the spirits of the East into your now moment to help you move through this transitional time, because there's this huge gateway that's opening that we're all walking through. And so I just keep trying to come up with more and more ways to be able to support people, in a bigger way. Because really just one person can't do everything. And I know we're all out there doing everything, and it's going to take all of us doing all of this work in order to be able to stabilize the planet. And I am always asking the team, it's like, okay, well, you can give me the information about the beginning. Can you give me a little information about this new doorway coming up? Can you give me the information? When is that magical shift getting ready to happen? It's like, you're already in the shift. What are you talking about? We're already shifting. And what they've told me is that when enough of us anchor and lock into a frequency, whether it's a 5D, a 6D, a 7D, whatever, that's when Gaia herself will transition, because we're kind of like the neurological system of Gaia. And Kiana, I can't even think, sorry, but talks about Kiara. There we go, Kiara Windrider. I've had him on many times. Kiara talks about how humanity is the neurological system of the planet. Come here, baby. And so what happens is, like 2012, we all shifted into 4D. Okay, so we're all operating in 4D. Even the people that don't seem to be conscious are operating in 4D. But a lot of people, their thought processes, the dimensional circuits, are operating at 5, 6, 7, 12, whatever D. But when we all come together, we could even lock into a 10D if enough people rose their frequency and locked in at one time, and we would all shift over. So the shift is already happening. The ascension systems are really real. And I apologize for my dog in the background. He's really wanting to go out. But that's kind of what's happening. And I'm super excited to be able to work with people, and offer these ceremonies and offer the ascension support and offer the Monday night transmissions. And so, the Living Light Archives, even though it contains all the informational set, there's still a lot of tools that are out there for people.
Right. And so I know I talked about this years and years ago. I was having visions about devastation in my particular area. I mean, being underwater
Yeah.
And I'm going, how could that even be? We're 6 hours from the coast.
Right.
And so they had given me specific dates that this was going to happen, and I prepared like any good person. And when it didn't happen, I asked, WTF, right?
Yeah.
What's going on? I made all these preparations. You gave me these dates, and the answer was very simple. Um, those are only possibilities.
Right.
That humanity, sometimes they, not saying that's what you're talking about, but sometimes they install fear programs
Yes.
to wake humanity up, right? And if it works, then the devastation or the chaos that was going to occur is no longer required,
Right.
you know. And
Yeah.
so then they over a 5 year period, they kept giving me new dates. It's going to happen on this date, it's going to happen on that date. And it never happened. And I'm like, look, I'm just going to lay back. And if it happens, it happens. And they said, we'll always give you 3 days notice. That kind of, that kind
Oh,
of,
isn't that great? 3 days
but that
notice.
kind of took the pressure off a little bit. But in reference to what you're saying, humanity, I mean, we have all these things going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
And it's a wake up program. And you're right. The more of us that come online, the more of us that wake up and start to live in our hearts,
Yeah.
start to live in the light, start walking in a good way, as our red
Yeah.
relatives would say,
That's right.
then, things are going to begin to line up a lot faster. And we need these programs, the programs that you're offering, because they are of a higher frequency than the ones that we had before. And I even say this with my books. I wrote that first book, and the minute I wrote the book and published it, I knew that it was already
Yeah.
not out of date, but out of frequency. I already knew that the frequency had gone up a notch or 7 or 8 or
Yeah.
10 after I released that book. And so it's become sort of a joke with me every time I write a book. It's like, well, this was needed right this second, you know, but I'm getting all this new information now that says it's not invalid, but there's another step
Yeah.
to all of this. If you have time,
Yeah.
I'm always referring people to you for about the walk-in phenomena.
Okay.
You know, people ask me about it because I've had 16 that I'm aware of. And so people are ask me sometimes, well, what is a walk-in? And I can only give them the elementary, version of it, because it's it's not that important for me to
Yeah.
really know what it is. But people have questions, and you're the
Yeah.
expert.
Oh,
I send everybody to you.
oh, well, thanks.
So if you have time, can you touch on that a bit? What is the purpose of a walk-in? You've touched about what people can expect, but I think people's main question is, what is the purpose? Because there is the walk-in and there's the takeover. That's the most questions that I get. I
Yeah.
keep telling them we're talking about two different things,
Yep.
people. You know.
We are. So let me tell you,
Okay.
and of course this is from my collective's, opinion. Someone else's may be different. But what the ODC has told me is that a walk-in, for me, a soul exchange walk-in, literally one soul out, another soul in. That's pretty simple, soul exchange. Okay? It's not so simple when you really think about the dynamics, because then you have to change out all of the chakras. You have to change out all the spiritual bodies. You have to change out all the gridded systems, blah, blah, blah. But that's what the soul exchange walk in is. Then there's what's called an overlay walk in. That's where you'll have another higher aspect. And let me tell you, walk ins are always, always, always of a much higher dimensional frequency than the soul that was there and that is exiting, okay? If you have someone who begins to behave in a negative way, someone who begins to succumb to evil, someone who drops into greed, someone who drops into all the ego-based dynamics that are out there, chances are that's not a real walk-in. It is a false light replacement. A false light replacement is very different than a walk-in. It's almost like it's not a hostile takeover because there was an agreement for the switch to occur, but it is more of, it's kind of like a negative entity that comes in. Now, in the beginning of all things, when the source went through that polarity, that first movement, there was the division of the light and the darkness. And those beings that said, hey, I'll serve in the light. And there were beings that said, hey, I'll serve in the dark. Because remember, it's all source anyway. So those beings in the dark, some of them, dark is dark. Dark is not bad. Dark is just dark. But some of them kept going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the darkness until they became actually evil. They began to lose their co-creative abilities. And the only way that they could regain them is to siphon those off of humanity. Now, sometimes they're stuck on the outside of people's fields and they're just like this vacuum cleaner trying to suck your energy. But sometimes, in the case of a walk-in, they will hijack a body. And they will come in and disguise themselves as light. They will come in and disguise themselves as someone who is the savior for humanity. And I am this and I am that. And you can always recognize someone operating in the false light when, as my teacher would always say, that which you say you are, you truly are not. Okay? Because they start, spouting off how wonderful they are and how they're here to do this, that, and the other. So that's the false light type of walk-in. Then you have even like a demonic possession. That is not a walk-in at all. That is literally a possession. There was a weakness in the field and another energy came in. So I wanted to get those out of the way before I start talking about the rest of these, because all of these other types operate within the light. Okay? So when you have this overlay, you have the soul that's in the body, but it's kind of weary. It's kind of tired. It's gotten burnt out. It's like, oh my God, what was I thinking when I came into this body? And you have a new higher aspect within its own oversoul that comes in and kind of fits around it like a neoprene suit. And it can do one of two things. It can serve as a battery charger, in which case it just gives the energy and away it goes. Or it can hold space while the other soul aspect goes off for healing or maybe on a new assignment or whatever, and then it comes back. And the two of them, at that point, this aspect can leave or they can meld together as one. Then you have the soul braid. Everyone's heard about a soul braid. That's where you have the soul. Then you have another independent soul and they begin to braid among each other. They retain their own identity, their own soul mission, but they come from the same oversoul and they're very copacetic. However, sometimes these soul braids are not really of the light. They are false light as well. And that's when people start to get sick. They have these horrible personality changes. And you can always, I really think it's easy to tell people who are the false light. So you can tell when that soul braid is not of the light. The next type that you have is that layering aspect. That's where you have multiple soul aspects that come in all at one time, and they're literally like layered. And at one point, you may have an Andromedan aspect that comes forward, and then it goes back, and an Arcturian aspect comes forward and goes back. So you've got like this beautiful dance of the soul. That is an unlimited number. I find, honestly, Patricia, more and more people that I'm working with come in with layered souls. They don't have, I had to be beat up against the head. They had to take the old one out, bring the new one in to affect the change. But a lot of people are being born like that, and then bam, something happens and they get activated. And then all of those different galactic soul aspects, all of the source aspects, all of the angelic aspects then begin to come online. Then we have people, I call these step downs, and that's kind of like what I think you've experienced, Patricia, because it's kind of like the body serves as this rotational door for all of these experiences to come in. But the cool thing is what happens is they imprint and then they leave. And that's very similar to what I also call a jumper. A jumper soul will come in for a short period of time, imprints tons and tons of information, and then they're gone. And people will know and understand that something has happened to them, but they just can't quite figure it out. Or all of a sudden they're like, I've had these phenomenal downloads and I don't understand where they've come from. That could be a soul jumper. So there's so many different types of souls, and I call all of them soul experiences. If you guys will excuse me just a second, I do apologize. My little dog is in some pain over here.
So while she's gone, I can tell you that for me, there's no real clear explanation because I don't remember a lot of my life.
Yeah.
But I haven't had any major personality changes. I mean, I've had some triggers that used to work don't work anymore. So there were some upgrades, but I haven't had, a complete flip like you did, right? Mine are just my team has begun to call them upgrades.
Yeah.
And that I just got upgrades.
That can happen too, because you'll have a higher, one of the cool things that's happening is, within the Shantias Khan, one of the things that we have is our higher self stream. And, when that higher self stream starts to come in and it gets denser and denser and it attaches to the body, then it becomes the personality for this lifetime, which is our soul. And then the spiritual aspects, the spirit, as that higher self comes in and it branches out, that's where all the codes are that create our spiritual bodies, and then all of our various gridded systems and all of the ley lines and all the meridians and all the chakras and all that kind of programmable information is found within that spiritual field. So when you have all of this information coming in from that higher self, you could have actually, what seems to me when I'm looking at you, it looks like you have already embodied your higher self, and your higher self is just serving as this pathway to allow more and more information, more and more soul aspects coming in from your higher self. From not your higher self, but from your oversoul. Right. Because the oversoul, I mean, you can be having right now, this aspect of your Shantias Khan can be having 12 different multidimensional aspects right now as you're sitting here talking to me. And that's just right now in this now moment. Well, we're billions of years old, people. So how many lives could we have lived? Okay? And so a lot of times what's happening now is those aspects within our oversoul are beginning to collide, and then they begin to come in. And so some people will have all these new memories and they're like, I don't even know where I'm getting this stuff from. Well, chances are you're having a merger from your oversoul, or maybe your higher self is serving to bring in higher aspects. So, right now, a lot of people are really looking, when I used to work with people, because I also do the QHHT stuff, and when I had a lot of sessions, people wanted to know about their galactic histories. Let me do this. First, people wanted to know about their past lives. Right. And then that kind of went away. And then they wanted to know about their galactic histories. And that's kind of going by the wayside. Now everybody wants to know about their soul purpose. Everybody wants to know what their mission is. Am I on track? I love that. I absolutely love that, because that shows how our consciousness is shifting. Now we're focused on the soul. Now we want to know about the oversoul. We want to know about the monad. We want to know about all those various layers, all those templates of creation that really made us up. And so when I'm working with people and I'm teaching people, I tell them, I'm not going to teach you a thing. I'm only going to help you remember what you already know, what's already imprinted into your holographic blueprint. You now are going to access that.
Right.
And so every one of us has the same kind of information. Some of us, our purpose is to remember it. That's kind of what I'm doing. Sometimes their purpose is to allow it to flow through to heal. Some people's purpose is to just show as a way shower. It's like, hey, look, if I can do this, you can do this. Some people are here to teach about manifestation. And, that's one thing too, people always come to me about. It's like, what do I need to do for financial prosperity? Well, most of the people, when I look, they've already got it in their fields. It's just a matter of expanding, but being able to hold that expansion, to pull that in, because everything, just like with the divine source creator, Mother, Father, God, everything is like the in-breath and the out-breath. And so even our oversouls have this in-breath, our spiritual bodies have this in-breath and out-breath. And as we expand, we pull in those things that we are capable of holding, because everything is about frequency.
Right. Money in, money out. I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Sheila at this point? We're just about to wrap it up, so now's a good
If we
time
got
to
a
ask a
couple,
question.
yeah, and I'll also do a real quick activation at the end.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Poor Billy.
They're listening so hard to what you're saying that I don't think people's brains are moving fast enough to ask a question.
That's
And
okay.
even probably the questions that they had, you're answering faster than they can ask them.
Mm.
And so that's a good sign. Well, do you want to go ahead and move into
Yeah.
the activation then?
Yeah, I would love to do that. So,
Okay.
one of the things I want to do is to be able to, clear the field so that we can kind of balance and open up those nodes so that everybody can hold more codes, because as we move into this equinox time, it's going to be really important for us to be clear, to be able to hold everything, because otherwise it's kind of working through like the biofilm of our holographic grid. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of clearing there. All right, so just go ahead and close your eyes. I always like for everybody to take 4 breaths in. I should say counts to 4 actually. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hold for the count of 3. Exhale to the count of 4. Pause to the count of 3. And just continue that breathing. Breathe in to the count of 4. Hold to the count of 3. Exhale to the count of 4. Pause to the count of 3. Then I want to cover everybody in a 12D bubble of light so that only the highest divine frequencies could enter in, and only those that are for your best and highest good and in alignment with your birth plan would be able to affect change tonight. Nia hana beta ko lukutu ro bahamani yeshina la hana bara kono ruko bata kamali yeshina la hata tarikina luku mana kapatari yeshina la hana kapatu kumana erikina la hana kadere kapatu kumali yeshina la pata kumali ana utu ruko bahari tena laha erikina lu umana katatari shina lokutu ruko ba erikina namaha erikina la nu utu ruko bahamana yeshina la ha katatari piki ruku manaha aritina laha Tukupa mana inele na lu kumahana shata erikiti lukutu rupa hamana katare ina lahama arikina lu tudukupa mahana tatarikina la erishatati tikulu pai amana anekatata ikina la kutudukupa erikina arishatata tupa erikine leana katari ekena lokuturukupa pa uruku papa mana nia katata erikina la anakuturu kumahama katatari kila etatatu pamana lu kuturu bahara katare etanama erikina na hata tatarikina lu wa batu rashakata eriki patukupa erima Enieshana tatatarikina lukuturupa manakata erikina lahama kataturupa erikina lahama kututupa hakapatata esha rakanalapa. So take another breath in and out and just allow that to anchor. So, somebody asked me one time, said, well, how can you work on a group and everybody get what they need? But if you'll remember earlier, I talked about being able to see the grid. So what happens is when I go into this, it's kind of like a holographic person comes in front of me. I don't create that, but the ODC does, and I see that, and that's created of threads and strands of everybody that's here that's creating this container tonight. And so when that container is created, then all I do is work on that single being in front of me, which has threads that goes out to each of you. So Patricia may get something different than somebody else gets.
Right. We did have a question. If you have a
Okay,
minute,
sure.
Kayla asked a question. Do you want me to read it or do you see it?
Down in the Q&A.
Uh,
Let,
yeah,
let
she
me
said,
grab my specs here. Let's see, Kayla. Let's see, something hit big just now as you defined way shower. If I can do this, you can do this. Can you say more about that? Absolutely. So, in the creation of our oversouls, we contain all of the rays, all of the frequencies, all the I am structures. We contain
yes,
everything.
ma'am.
And when we come out, we bring in with us those components that we're going to need to operate with in this lifetime. I am just operating as a walk in aspect. Everybody can do, I believe everyone contains all the same information. So if it's your desire to be able to do something, if it's your desire to be a way shower, you can do that in many, many ways. You can do that behaviorally by showing how you walk your walk. You can do that by sharing information with your friends, with your families, to let them know how you choose to stand between heaven and earth, how you ground in to the planet. So being a way shower doesn't necessarily mean that you're that you're being interviewed for something and that you're talking about something. It can be as simple as how you operate in the grocery store. Because believe you me, your frequency is important. If it weren't important, you would not be here. A lot of people say, I don't have a purpose, I don't have this. I'm going to tell you, there are because I remember on the other side and stuff, there are souls lined up, people, to get here. You are the lucky one. People say, oh my God, my life is so horrible. Guess what? It's an experience to be had. That's all. Life is an experience. Good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. On the other side, it's an experience. It's for the edification of the soul. It's for growth. So being a way shower comes through differently for every single person. And a lot of people say, yeah, well, you got the kind of the cheat mechanism. You came in as a walk-in. Yeah, I did. I got to cheat. I've got memories, but I'm sharing those with you to help spark your memories. So, go back and watch this and see if that word way shower really sat with you. When you listen to this meditation again, you hold that, because that activation, that frequency transmission can open up whatever intention it is that you're holding for yourself.
Yeah. So Sharon, we got one more question.
Okay.
Sharon wants to know, are there a lot of teachers now with different spiritual teams that have different purposes? She said, I have several teachers now and communities, and I'm trying to discern what is mine to do.
Absolutely. There are so many teachers out there and so many teachers of the light. Everybody brings in their piece of the pie, because there will be people who will come to them that need the frequency that they have to offer. My frequency teachings are different than Patricia's frequency teachings, which are different than my teacher's teachings. Everything is about frequency and how that lands within your field. So like when Patricia does her light language, it's going to affect you differently than what my light language does, because
Right.
it's coming from the resonance of her soul. The same thing with teachings. That vibrational frequency that comes out, that information that comes in, is of a different vibrational frequency to serve other beings of that frequency.
Yeah. So Jenny just basically had a comment. She said, thank you both for this conversation. Sheila, you mentioned a few little extras regarding walk-ins, and I can now see a little more clearly the nature of my own. I also appreciate your mention to daily life purpose. I'm so tired of being told that I should be doing this or that, i.e., teaching, and thus I haven't begun my mission unless I do. Yeah, people, people want to tell you, but they're seeing it from their point of view.
Yeah,
The point of view is subjective. My point of view,
absolutely.
like Sheila said, is different from
Yeah,
we all have a different point of view. We all have a different definition and understanding as to even what the word love means,
yeah. And
and so, yeah, you've
it,
got to find your own. That's where your comfort zone
yeah.
is, in finding your own.
Right. And it's so cool that we all have a different opinion. You know, if we all had the same opinion, how boring would life be? I love it when somebody comes up with something counter to what I believe in because I'm just like, gosh, I never thought of that before. Not that they're going to change my mind, but you can always learn something, okay? So I always say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Take what resonates with you and then just let the rest dissolve back into the universe.
And like I said earlier, my belief system right now, this second, may change in 5 minutes.
Yes, absolutely.
My point of view about this may change in a year, 5 seconds, whatever, because as my frequency expands, I
Yes.
connect into a different level of awareness.
Yeah.
Like Sheila
Yeah.
said, you keep going, hopefully, we keep going up,
Yeah.
right? We keep expanding and
Right.
receiving more information.
Right.
So it's never, I'm going to say, we're going to hope that you don't always believe the same thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you always believe the same thing, then you're not expanding. You've
Right.
got to expand.
Right. And if you think your way is the only way,
Yeah,
then you
it's
need to really
not.
sit with that, and open up to allow other information to come in. So I always say if you hear people that say this is the true way, whoosh, turn and go the other way
Right.
because there are so many facets to the crystal that life is. You know, everyone is a reflection of that light. So you hold that crystal up to the sun, you're going to get this cornucopia, you're going to get this beautiful rainbow, this tapestry of light that's all over your walls, right? Well,
And even with crystals, you're mentioning crystals. How many of you heard that your crystal will change? The color of your crystal will change
yeah,
over time because a crystal is a living being,
right,
right? And it also evolves.
right,
So, I mean, nothing should ever stay exactly the same.
right. Well,
I, I wanted I
Patricia, it's
wanted to
been
t- I
fun.
wanted to tell you real quick though. You were talking about things changing. I went to the UK one. I've been to the UK a million times, but one of the times that we went to Tintagel, which is one of my favorite places to go. It's where Merlin's Cave is, and
Ooh,
Camelot Castle, and um, so I've been there a lot. Okay, and you can walk. I like to stay at this castle. I think they call it Camelot Castle. I don't remember. Anyway, I like to stay there because you can walk behind it along the coast down to the cave instead of going through town. And so I was so excited. I took one of my best friends with me, and I was so excited. We didn't get there until late at night. And I like to go out at night. I like to walk at night. And so I said, let's go to the cave. If it, unless the tide is up, then you can't.
right.
But I said, let's go to the cave. And so we took my route that I've taken some 10 times at least. We took this route, and all of a sudden I said, this is different. We ended up in a completely different place. And I swore to her that they had changed, they had changed the coast. I said, there's something wrong here. I've walked this a million times and it is not the same. How did they change the coastline? How did they move this? Even Merlin's Cave wasn't where I remembered it to be.
Yeah,
taking that one trail. And so I thought about that while you were talking.
Yeah, the
I
dimensional
told her,
shift.
yeah, I told her they're always changing things on me, you
That's
know.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Well, I
Beautiful.
want to thank you, Sheila, for joining us.
Aw.
And
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
yeah, and for giving so much information. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today for Cosmic Conversations here on Conscious Awakening Network. And I hope that something today that was shared with you resonated, and according to the comments, it did, in your heart and your inner knowing, not just as information, but as remembrance. Remembrance is a key word. And if you'd like to continue your journey with Conscious Awakening Network, I invite you to explore our upcoming summits. We have one coming up on April 4th and 5th called Field Frequency in the Body. We're going to be talking about healing, and and the grid lines. Sheila's going to be a speaker. Um, we also are offering some free webinars. There's one of those in May. And then Sheila has her Monday night transmissions. You should definitely check those out. And I put the link in the chat here for all of Sheila's contacts. So before we close here, you might want to copy off those links. Sheila does these weekly transmissions on Monday night transmissions. Now, check back next Tuesday, because next Tuesday our guest will be Leslie Ziminik. And I've had her as a guest on the summits quite a lot. You will enjoy that. So be sure and check back next Tuesday as well. So do you have any last words of wisdom for us, Sheila?
I just want everybody to know that, you are so much more powerful than you could ever imagine. And things are shifting and changing, and you are right here meant to be exactly where you are, and that everything is in perfect and divine alignment for you.
Exactly. So keep doing it, keep
That's
expanding,
right.
keep learning, keep connecting
That's
in,
right.
keep remembering.
That's
And
right.
I look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thanks. Good night, everybody. Thanks,
Good
Patricia.
night.